They were the most feared force in the ocean. So why did most of them never come back? Roughly 40,000 men were assigned to Germany's U-boat fleet between 1939 and 1945. Of those, nearly 30,000 never returned. That is 3 out of every 4, dead, missing, or lost at sea. No other major combat arm of the German military suffered losses on this scale. The U-boat service became a byword for sacrifice, and for many families, a promise of glory that ended in silence. Every patrol order, every operational decision passed through a single nerve center, the Befehlshaber der Unterseeboote, BDU, commanded by Admiral Karl Dönitz. From his headquarters in occupied France, Dönitz oversaw the entire campaign, directing boats across the Atlantic with near total authority. He was the face and architect of the U-boat war, revered by his crews and trusted by Hitler himself. Dönitz believed the submarine could bring Britain to its knees, and he demanded total commitment from his men. The numbers, 40,000 sent, 30,000 lost, nearly 800 boats destroyed, were not just statistics. They were the direct result of choices made at the very top, and every new order from BDU would ripple down as a matter of life or death for the men inside those steel hulls. How could so many be sacrificed? And why did the command center keep sending them out? The answer lies in what happened next. In the summer of 1940, the Atlantic seemed to belong to the U-boat crews. Convoys crawled across vast stretches of ocean with only 2 or 3 destroyers for protection. Their sonar unreliable, their radar nearly useless in rough seas. At night, submarines surfaced almost alongside their prey, launching torpedoes in coordinated attacks. In those first 2 years, German wolfpacks destroyed over 400,000 tons of Allied shipping. The numbers soared, and so did the confidence. Sailors like Ernst, just 20 years old, wrote home about the thrill of the hunt and the pride of being called the Knights of the Sea. The BDU headquarters broadcast victory tallies, and newspapers printed stories of U-boat aces outwitting entire fleets. Inside the boats, morale was high. Promotions came quickly, and the sense of invincibility grew with every successful patrol. The crews believed they were rewriting naval warfare, that the submarine was the decisive weapon Dönitz promised. But beneath the bravado, the reality was already shifting. Each new success demanded greater risks, longer patrols, more aggressive tactics, and a growing reliance on thinly stretched technology. The Atlantic, for a brief moment, looked like a German lake. Few realized how quickly that illusion would be shattered. Inside a Type 7 or Type 9 U-boat, the promise of glory dissolved into something much smaller and more suffocating. 44 to 53 men squeezed into a hull barely wide enough to stand upright, with less room than a city bus. Every surface sweated with condensation. The air stank of diesel, sweat, and unwashed bodies. Beds were so scarce that hot bunking became routine. 3 men to a bunk, swapping places as shifts changed, sheets never dry. Rations ran out of freshness in days, canned meat, hard biscuits, and powdered milk stretched for weeks. Scurvy crept in where vitamin C ran out. Toilet facilities amounted to a single head, sometimes overflowing, always shared. Showers did not exist. Patrols stretched 4, 6, even 10 weeks as the war dragged on, with no sunlight and only the hum of machinery to mark time. Sleep came in snatches broken by alarms and the distant thud of depth charges. Herbert Werner, a young officer, remembered the silence after an attack, the way every man lay in the dark listening for the next explosion, willing the hull to hold just a little longer. Most were barely out of their teens. The confidence broadcast from headquarters rarely reached the cramped torpedo room. In the dark, under the ocean, the myth of the invincible U-boat ace gave way to something raw and vulnerable, a sense that the steel was thin and that survival was never guaranteed. Klaus, the radio operator, sat hunched over his set, headphones pressed tight, waiting for the coded order from headquarters. Every U-boat depended on men like him to keep the wolfpack in sync. Each time a convoy was spotted, Klaus keyed out a burst of high-frequency Morse, position, bearing, speed, encrypted by the trusted Enigma. But the danger was not in the message, it was in the act of sending it. Each transmission, even if it lasted only 30 seconds, became a flare in the dark Atlantic. Allied high-frequency direction-finding stations, spread from Newfoundland to the Azores, listened for those signals, triangulating their origin within a few kilometers. Sometimes, a single report was enough to bring destroyers and aircraft bearing down on the boat's last known position. The BDU, the U-boat command, demanded 4, sometimes 6 reports a day. There was no way to coordinate a wolfpack without them. Klaus knew that every extra second on the air increased the risk, but silence was not an option. When Allied technology could fix a boat's location in under 2 minutes, the radio that once connected the fleet became a liability. For the men below, every message sent was a roll of the dice. One more chance for the enemy to find them before they could dive. By mid-1942, something invisible had begun to haunt the Atlantic. British cryptanalysts at Bletchley Park, working in silence, were reading the German Navy's Enigma traffic with increasing regularity. The turning point came in October, when sailors from HMS Petard boarded the sinking U-559 and seized the codebooks, the so-called Shark and Triton settings that finally unlocked the naval cipher. From that moment, the Allies could read U-boat orders almost as quickly as Dönitz's own staff. Convoy routes, departure times, and even emergency course changes were now planned with knowledge of exactly where the wolfpacks waited. To the crews, it was as if the convoys had vanished into thin air, slipping past ambush lines that should have been perfect. Orders came down to hunt in new sectors, but the prey always seemed one step ahead. No one in the steel hulls suspected that every move was being watched from a quiet country house outside London. The men kept sending their encrypted reports, trusting in Enigma, never realizing that each message only tightened the noose. As Ultra's decrypts grew more reliable, the odds for every patrol grew worse. For the U-boat crews, the sea itself had turned traitor, but the reason remained hidden until it was far too late. Detection once meant destruction. With the arrival of ASV Mark III radar in 1943, Allied aircraft could spot a surfaced U-boat at night or through fog from as far as 100 miles away. The mid-Atlantic, once a haven, shrank overnight. The so-called Black Gap, the stretch of ocean beyond the reach of land-based planes, vanished as B-24 Liberators and other long-range aircraft began patrolling nearly every corner of the convoy routes. U-boats, forced to surface for air or batteries, became easy targets, caught in the beams of microwave radar before the crew even heard the thrum of engines overhead. Diving brought no safety. The Royal Navy's Hedgehog mortar fired a pattern of 24 bombs ahead of the attacking ship, each set to explode only on contact. Unlike depth charges, Hedgehog allowed for repeated, precise attacks. The kill ratio per attack jumped from around 10% to nearly 30%. For the men trapped inside, the margin for error vanished. A single detection by air or by ship meant a race against weapons designed to leave no survivors. Patrols that once ended with a tally of ships sunk now ended with the silent roll call of men lost at sea. The ocean that had seemed so vast closed in, and every patrol became a test of how long a crew could avoid the crosshairs. May 1943 became known as Black May for the U-boat fleet. In 31 days, German records counted 41 submarines lost, almost a quarter of the operational force in the Atlantic. Shipyards in Hamburg and Kiel could not keep pace. The number of boats destroyed far outstripped new construction. For the men in the flotillas, the scale of loss was impossible to ignore. An entire patrol group could leave port and only a handful would return. The Atlantic, once a hunting ground, had become a graveyard. The official tally, 41 boats gone and dozens more damaged, circulated in whispered conversations below decks and in the stunned silence of empty berths. Crewmen who survived patrols arrived in port to find that friends and entire crews had disappeared. For the first time, the numbers made it clear the U-boat campaign was broken, and survival was now a matter of luck, not skill. Patrol orders kept coming, even as the odds of survival dropped below a coin toss. By late 1944, BDU communiques acknowledged that a single Atlantic mission carried more than a 60% chance of never returning. Commanders at headquarters, led by Dönitz, pressed on with deployments, driven by a belief in the U-boat's symbolic power and the need to show resilience, even as the strategic picture grew hopeless. Crews, many barely out of training, were sent out knowing the risks. Letters home carried a tone of resignation, not bravado. The introduction of the snorkel, meant to let boats run submerged and avoid radar, came too late and brought its own problems, mechanical failures, suffocating air, and little real improvement in survival rates. Every new patrol became a test of obedience and endurance, as command decisions weighed political motives against the lives of exhausted, frightened men. The question lingers: at what point does duty become something else? Today, the faces behind those casualty figures are mostly forgotten. Their average age was just 21, and patrols lasted weeks in darkness. When strategy values statistics over lives, history repeats its cruelties. The cost was measured in thousands, but the lesson remains: no myth justifies sending men to certain death. Share your thoughts below.